This is the regular Board of Directors meeting, February 15, 2024, of the Netarts-Oceanside Sanitary District. This meeting is being recorded, and I'll call the meeting to order. The first item is approval of the agenda as a board action. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second that.
Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and do it under item 5, under discussion. But Simeon and I will talk just a couple minutes about the annual SDAO conference we attended last week. So with that, all in favor of accepting the agenda, say aye.
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 Yes, we have none. Public comments, none. Board questions, comments, and discussion. Do you want to
Sure.
lead?
John and I attended the SDO conference, the Special District Association of Oregon. I found it to be very useful. I attended the pre-session on board duties and responsibilities, which was enlightening. Probably not news to anybody here, but I'm still a relative newbie, so various regulations around purchasing and different kinds of purchases and sources of funds and all the things that boards have to pay attention to, and all of the rules that we adhere to on public meetings and retention of documents and all that kind of stuff. It was all very systematically gone through and very useful. So, and reflected well, I think, on what we're doing here, because we seem to be doing it almost all right. So.
What's almost mean?
The bullet down here on number 13 on executive sessions is supposed to be more specific to, we should be citing the exact ordinance for the exact special session that we're, or executive
Which
session.
we have done on this one.
Oh, okay, all right. I don't think I ever paid attention to particular ordinances prior to this, but that's, one lives and learns, right? I think the most, I also attended a number of other sessions, one on the impact of Oregon's personal leave law, which was interesting. I don't think any special district is happy with that law. And there's a lot of things that are pretty gray about it.
You can expand that to Oregon employers in general.
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
It's new and hasn't been tested.
Yeah, and at the moment, the amount of money going out on it is much more than they predicted.
Right.
So there will probably be changes to it. There was a number of conversations about the current legislative session and some of the laws that are there and what their potential impacts might be. So that was interesting as well. I think the most useful thing for me was a concern I had going into the conference. Was a presentation that both John and I attended on cybersecurity, where there was an FBI agent and a woman from the state and a woman from an organization called the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. And they, among other things, have free services that we've all paid for because we're taxpayers. So they're not free, but that they would be more than willing to offer to any special district in terms of just assessing our current practices and our public-facing websites and where the vulnerabilities might be, where our infrastructure vulnerabilities might be. They're very concerned, the FBI and the CISPS and the state. There have been a variety of ransomware attacks and other attacks around the state that have had serious consequences. Public infrastructure is a target. So it would be good, I think, to make use of CISPA's services, and I would probably recommend that we seriously consider doing that. I have information.
Yes.
That, you know, and they gave me lots of stickers, people want stickers. But more usefully, a variety of handouts that we can consider. John, did you wanna add anything?
Yeah, this was Leslie Canoa,
Yeah.
I think it was, and she's also the cybersecurity state coordinator for the state of Oregon. And they're anxious to get out there and help various organizations, particularly governmental, take a look at how good their cybersecurity is. And one of the things is a cyber infrastructure survey that they do. It's about 4 or 5 hours long. And then they do vulnerability scanning. And again, all that's at no cost to us, which Dan thought, hey, I'll go for that. As opposed to, you go to these meetings and very often there's a vendor who's trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
So yes, they were selling us something, but it would not cost us anything. Now, they could recommend other folks, but you don't have to bite on it at all.
Right.
So, all right, so are you pretty well done, or did you wanna add anything?
No, I'm pretty well done.
Okay, we also attended the Sanitary District Caucus, which I had not attended before, and it's basically was run by the Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies. They talked about our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, which is that next year or the year after? That we're
We
gonna be
have-
in a cycle?
Our permit will expire February 28th of 2025.
25, but they said that they're 3, 4, 5 years behind on some of this.
I've been doing this for over 25 years, and they're always behind. We always run on an expired permit for at least 2, 3, up to 5 years.
So they also said there'd be new water quality standards, new maximum daily loads, monitoring requirements, and DEQ policies. There are now a consolidation of 9 permit writers. And I didn't know, I guess that there was one guy that came down with the team from DEQ that visited us when we had the last Netarts problem. And he kind of stood aside, and I talked to him a little bit, and I guess he was a permit writer, is what he was. Anyway, 7 of the 9 have less than 2 years' experience. So they basically said, they're not gonna know your facility, your community, local physical or environmental things, so it's,
Or the
Could
history
be.
of our current permit.
could be pretty challenging
Yeah.
when that comes about.
Because that won't stop them from
And the other,
acting like they do.
one of the other big issues was PFAS, which I didn't know anything about, but polyfluoroalkyl substances, which are your plastics and other items. There's 9,000 items, and their concern is that sanitary districts, which are just pass-throughs for businesses or corporations that dump some of this stuff,
Or
that we not be
residential.
treated like hazardous waste sites. So they want to make sure that the language reflects that, and Oregon State is supposed to, if they get funded, do a study of where these substances are around the state and how the problems with them. That's House Bill 4049. It hasn't been passed. Don't know if it will be passed in this 35-day session or not. In another area, public meetings that you alluded to, House Bill 2805. They further clarified what the word meeting means, and by talking about convening and deliberating. And the standard things as far as convening a meeting, physical location, electronic or video, serial electronic written communication. But what was interesting, they added using an intermediary to communicate among participants, so among board members. So if somebody is conveying the information, that could in effect be a meeting. And they had not defined deliberation, but it's a discussion or communication that is part of a decision-making process. So it's not necessarily actually the process itself, but it is related to it. And all this is just coming about. It supposedly is in effect. And I asked the speaker, you know, I said, well, when does this come about? Well, it's in effect now. Well, nobody has any rules or anything else. I guess that's the way you do things with the Oregon legislature. They just throw it out there and good luck, at least initially.
Yeah, I don't know what agency is even in charge of that, so.
Excuse me?
I don't know which agency is in charge of that would write the rules.
Well, apparently, it's the Oregon Government Ethics Commission,
Okay,
which oversees public meetings and retention of documents and so forth. So before, they only were able to address executive session violations. But now if it's a violation of any public meeting, they can address it if there's a complaint.
a complaint by anybody.
Yeah, and they're setting up a process for responding to grievances. And another thing that's of interest, it's no big deal, but now per this House bill, each and every member of a board whose organization spends $1 million a year has to have once during their tenure training on public meetings. Now, SDAO has submitted to this Government Ethics Commission what they think that ought to consist of in their proposal for it, but they haven't heard back anything, so I don't know that the Ethics Commission has thought that far down the road as far as what that training would actually look like.
Yeah, it's not clear to SDAO whether or not that will be a training solely done by the ethics board, or whether they will subcontract it
Yeah,
out
yeah.
to people like SDAO.
SDAO, I think, is sort of figuring that they would have the right, or they would have the ability to provide that training in one of their modules. But whether that's true or not, only time will tell, I guess. Is that?
Yeah, yeah, one of the things that I learned is that if John sends a message to all the board members, that's not a meeting. But if any of us reply alls, then it is a meeting. So the instruction was to board members, never use reply all. Just-
Yeah.
Okay. I'm interested in that intermediary part, because the way the county commissioners communicate is they tell something to Rachel, the chief of staff, and she tells it to the other commissioners in one-on-one meetings, so that they don't have two of them in the same conversation. I don't know how it would function if that's not allowed.
Well, I think the purpose of it is to force it all into the public record.
Right, even brainstorming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know,
It's like so unrealistic.
yeah. Yeah.
And one other small note, in the legislative general session, House Bill 4099, system development charges. Now, it looks a little bit hazy, but apparently for affordable housing, developers can defer paying the SDC for 180 days after certification of occupancy is issued. And it also ensures that the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department would guarantee that payment. But it slows down how quickly you would receive funds from your SDCs.
A lot of people are unhappy with that because certificate occupancies are very different time-wise from issuing of initial permits.
So it's 180 days plus however long it took to issue the.
And sometimes certificate of occupancies are never in fact issued for some development, so.
Which I didn't quite understand because it's kind of like, it sounded like some districts are living SDC to SDC. I mean, really? But anyway, that's fine, complain, you know.
And that law hasn't passed yet.
Excuse me?
That law has not passed yet. It's a
Right, it's
proposed
one
law,
of the
so-
ones, but,
The SPC,
correct, but it could very possibly pass because the governor's number one
right. But I
effort
thought
is housing,
Yeah.
and
I thought part of the intent was affordable housing
yes,
was gonna have this arrangement,
yes,
period.
that's what I said,
That's what he said.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
yeah, yeah. So, but with her emphasis on this as her number one priority being housing, there's probably a good chance that it may pass.
Can I make a couple clarifications
Sure.
on what you two? So on the NPDS permit, they're good for 5 years once they're issued.
Mhm.
That doesn't count, so if you go, and they expire, it takes 3 years to get a new one, that new issue date starts your 5-year clock again.
Mhm.
The PFAS has been around for years.
All of
Every NPDS permit is a little bit different, depends on if you have industrial companies here, manufacturers. So NPDS permits where you discharge to, what your receiving stream.
Mhm.
There's a lot that goes into that. Temperatures is a big one with NPDS, that's your TMDLs.
Mhm.
We discharge to Pacific Ocean. I had that issue with the permit writer about a year ago, do you remember? They wanted us to go out in the ocean and take samples and take thermal readings, temperature readings and stuff. And it goes off to what you said, these new permit writers don't know your area. He said, well, can't you just walk out on the dock and, take these samples and stuff? I said, no. Well, he wanted me to go out to the point of discharge of our
Right.
effluent, which is a mile out at sea and
Right.
60 feet deep. He can't. So it goes up, when we start going through this, and we have to have our permit complete, our permit application to DEQ this year by August, by the middle of August, I think it is, which I'm going to teach Brian and Tyler how to do a complete permit application.
Mhm.
And so this will be my 5th or 6th one. So I will teach them how to do it, and then where, at what points during the application period does the district put in comments on what we don't want change or what we don't agree with. So we're allowed to submit that stuff, but you need to do it in a timely manner if you want it considered. So last permit, we used to do lab twice a week. There was no need with this SBR plant to do lab twice a week, so I requested to go to 1 day a week. I picked the day of Thursday every week, and they allowed that change. So it's not carved in stone by anybody that is new or doesn't know your plan. It's a pretty extensive 6-month process just in the application period. I just wanted the board to know that. Doesn't necessarily, we'll have to test for PFAS. We don't have any plastic manufacturing plants. They're still doing studies to see just when you use a plastic bottle
Right.
and drink, can you
Or
discharge
can.
plastics back into the
Yeah.
system?
Yeah.
So,
Do you have
we
one-
usually,
Do you have one point person assigned to you during the process so that there's a continuity during the 6 months?
There's-
Are you dealing with a,
there's generally at least 2. So we have our compliance officer, who we've dealt with for the Netarts and other stuff. And then you have the actual permit writer.
so just, you have a point person during the 6 months?
You have, so you have a point
Panel.
person, but you have to stay in contact with your compliance officer.
Yeah.
Sometimes there'll be two, depending on how complicated. And NPDS permits are also written on your MGD, your million gallons per day rating, like ours is a 0.5. So there's different permit levels for different, like, cities and that are up hundreds of millions of gallons a day. So the permit process is pretty well kind of carved into, you know, each one, is what I'm saying. On your testing, they will add more testing to us. I guarantee that, because Teflon is another big one. So there will be some changes to our new permit. I just don't know what yet.
Yeah, they said that there's 9,000 products that fall under the
Mhm.
PFAS category, so
Yeah.
it's probably just about anything you can,
Yeah.
anything you deal with in the way of plastics or any kind of related materials.
Our permit's a 30-30 permit, 30 milligrams a liter, which I usually put on the top. So we have the largest body of water that we discharge into, which is the Pacific Ocean. So usually your coastal cities along the coast, their permits aren't as tight when it comes to temperatures. That's another big one. Do you have to refrigerate your effluent before you discharge? Because we do have a large body of water.
Yeah, John raised the time that we were requested to take temperatures of our effluent flow, and basically the response that he got was, you want more data rather than less. Because if somebody goes down there once with a thermometer and that's the only data point, then they will go with that data point.
Yes.
And if you have lots of data, then you can average things out over time, and then the one squirrely reading that they happen to take doesn't become the thing that you're fighting against.
Testing data is also dictated in your NPDES permit. You know, we could do, some are required 4 tests a year, you know,
Yeah.
and then others are required daily and stuff like that. So that's all set forth, that's where you get that in your different
I would
schedules.
be curious to see that permit as it's put together,
Sure.
or once it's put together.
So, well, you can see our current one, so you can kind of compare when the new one comes out
I'd be
too.
curious too,
Yeah.
just to know.
And then the other thing was on cybersecurity.
Yeah.
We don't run, I know that Oceanside Water District is looking to hire a cybersecurity firm to come in and
Actually,
evaluate ours.
CISPAS has worked with
Yeah.
them.
Ours has been done. We were kind of hacked one time, several years ago. What saved us is we had all of our backups off-site. So we lost, I think it was a day or two of data. But all of our servers are separated, even though, for instance, the fire department uses our internet, their server is blocked from ours. So the internet is a pass-through, but nobody can get into our internet. Even if they get in and hack something into the fire department, they still can't back into us. Our SCADA system, which controls our treatment plant facilities, that's on a separate standalone server as well. But we've made those changes. It doesn't mean that cyber security hasn't changed. So it is a good idea,
I think so.
especially that you guys brought that back, that we do a health check on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Yeah, I think the bad actors are continually creative,
yeah.
so.
All right, any other questions? Then, review of the minutes of January 18th, 2024, regular board meeting minutes, a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move to accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Review of the minutes. I had one thing I was wondering. Under 5, Jeff asked, and there was no response. I'm assuming that you all responded that it was working, or something, or that you were satisfied.
Yes, yes.
So,
I actually think Brian responded to Jeff.
okay, so probably there needs to be another short sentence there.
we can look that up on the video recording, to see what was.
Yeah.
He asked the question, but he didn't get a response in the minutes.
Okay.
The minutes seemed to me to reflect the meeting I attended.
Anybody have any further comments? If not, all in favor of accepting the minutes as written, but adding in whoever responded to that question, say aye.
Aye.
January 31st, financial statements, review of all funds, motion to accept the financial statements.
I'll move to accept the financial statement.
I'll second it.
Our liability insurance premium, it's reflected on there, and the result was paid this month, that's an annual payment,
Yes.
including the 7,000, just slightly over budget.
Yeah. Which we just received notice on that general liability insurance too, that it's going up 14.5%.
Next year.
So we'll have to, when we start budget, we're gonna have to make sure that we remember that.
Is it normal that there's no connections in December and January?
Connections anymore are not normal at any time. They sometimes come in large batches. But anymore in the last probably 5 years, they're not like generally like springtime, you would get them, or, mid to late summer. Now they're just about any time. But it's not uncommon to go a few months without a system development charge. We probably still have some out on permit, they're not built, because the system development charge is usually the last thing that the builder wants to pay, so.
I have a question on personal services. Does the board understand what's going on between Vonet's account and Aaron's account? As far as Aaron's account is being burned up much more quickly because it's at a higher rate? Okay.
Since you're on that, you see the 2.29% from the budgeted amount of $7,350 on the workers' compensation.
Which page?
That's not gonna go up. It was accidentally paid in last budget cycle, so it's not that we're not gonna have workers' comp, so you can't use that when we go back to do budget again. It was just paid before it should have been.
So, if there's no other questions, looks like you're still going over, Jim.
Sorry.
Excuse me, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the financial statements as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, board audit, accounts payable. It's the next item.
influent flow meter is the one up at the headworks that measures the amount of gallons of water that comes into the plant every day.
And I didn't recall that we'd gotten a new one.
It's not a new one,
Oh.
it is a repair to it.
Oh, okay.
Those meters are a lot more money than that.
Oh, okay.
So that was we lost the display screen on one, the LCD screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They're upwards of over probably 15,000,
Okay.
which would come to the board before we replace it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
So will we get something back from SDAO for the conference attendee that did not attend, or is that a loss?
No, we already got refunded.
We did get refunded, okay, good. And then right below it, the soda ash, that's not just 50 pounds, is it?
No, it's 50-pound bags, there's an entire pallet.
Okay. I was looking at $1,251.
No, soda ash, that's how it's listed when we get
Okay.
the invoice, it's 50-pound bags.
All right.
And that's used in the treatment process for pH control.
Any other questions? All right. And I think we're ready for the district report.
So the treatment plant's running well within its permit limits, even though we've had some wild flows and storms and stuff, it's handled it pretty well. So under collection system, the operators have operated, have TV'd and inspected over 4,000 feet of line. I've added to this from last month, so we have manholes that leak, so we've had some pretty good rainstorms, which has helped to go out and check for this inflow. And I did speak with the contractor we usually use that goes in and makes these repairs. So we have an additional 12 manholes that we repaired, so I think that's up to 14 now, and probably 3 point repairs. And it's about $100 a foot vertical to put the coating in the manholes, and it is around $1,500 for a 3-foot point repair. And a point repair is basically inside your pipe. If you get a hole in it, they just bring in, they put basically a fiberglass liner in it, and they patch it up, so you don't have to excavate and dig up the road and the pipe anymore. And we have 3 of those. We'll have to verify and get a quote on it, but average they're about $1,500 to $1,800 per point repair. So I will probably have for next board meeting, estimated quote from the contractor on what it would cost. This contractor is the only one that does this type of work. Gelco or Michaels does it, but they usually only do $1 million and up jobs. We're not gonna do that. And there's really nobody close, but the auditor requires us to get 2 quotes. My problem is to try to get somebody to quote on the second one because the job's not big enough. That's usually where I run into a problem. There is a form that we can fill out saying, but I will make some calls to try to find somebody to at least give us a quote, even if they don't really want to do the job. It's cleaner for the auditors, but generally it's Underground Tech does most of this in the state of Oregon. So, the TV cameras seem to be working well. There is some maintenance that had to be done on them. So we sent off a camera to be serviced, but we still have our second lateral launch camera. So we'll continue this inspections through the wet weather, and then there'll be a few spots we will go pick, and most of the stuff's out in Netarts. And then we'll try to pick spots that are on the lower end of Netarts, closer to the bay, because that's more tidal flex that will tell you if there's leaks in those. And salt water is not something that our treatment plant handles well. So those will do more towards spring and summertime once the rain stops and backs off. In the wintertime, we need to do it when it's raining hard, especially when we inspect manholes. And the coatings we use, just for FYI, are good for 50 years. That's the warranty on it.
What percentage of our manholes, I mean, is there such a thing as going through a cycle of all the manholes in terms of inspections, and then like, how much of them have we done on this cycle?
Right, so I used to like it on a 5-year rotation, okay? So the percentage of manholes, they will change how many leaks you will find year to year. This new system that we found, they seem to be holding up longer. The reason it was a 5-year rotation, that's about how long grout was good for. So years ago, they would go in and inject basically like concrete grout in, and they would seal those up. That would get you about 5 years out of it. Well, now we have to rethink, and now I think we can change how we evaluate it, and we can pinpoint where we need to go. And so I think it'll be more cost effective for us. We'll get more bang for our buck when we don't have to keep going back and redoing the same ones every few years. They'll still be part of our inspection when we're checking the lines, the underground sewer lines, but the manholes will most likely be fine.
So in a perfect world, every manhole is inspected once every 5 years?
Yes, in a perfect world they are, but our intervals are now getting closer than that. So I think it depends on when we get this new system going, how fast we can get through the district. Netarts is more critical than Oceanside. Oceanside's up out of the water tables more, it's up higher. It's not that its sewer lines still don't need repaired, it's just that we don't have the I&I issue coming out of Oceanside as we do Netarts.
Dan, have we had any more flooding on the Bay Road?
No,
Okay.
no, not since the
The one
rain
big
is,
one?
yeah. We haven't gotten enough like we did, what was it, early January, so,
To dump into the system?
yeah. The new Cummins generator, there's still no change. It's still due here sometime in, I think, in September. I haven't gotten any updates yet on that from them. Xylem is working on, I told you that we had a problem with the control panel. So, long story short, I've had Xylem here. They did a demo of the new control panel that they offer now. And so now I've sent them back, I've approved that to be incorporated in the design. So that one, I'm waiting now for them to put together a quote for the cost to replace that panel. The quote will come in 2 different options. Rehab the one in place that's there, basically just empty the box out, put all new components in it, or pull it out and replace it like we did in Netarts. Netarts, we had only one choice. We had to pull out a complete unit and put in a complete unit because how critical that pump station is as a major pump station. Ocean Highlands isn't as critical, so you have more time to change out the panel. The problem is, if you do that, one big risk you have is now you have to test all the electrical components. And that sometimes could run into problems that could last a week or better. Where if you already bring a panel in that's completed, done, you're just paying for a swap out and then reconnect everything. John witnessed the last one, it actually goes pretty smooth. And usually you don't have those kind of problems. The only issues you will have is getting SCADA then hooked to that so it can read off of it. And that's when you bring in the automation group and they switch the SCADA over to the new product. It's a much safer way to do it as far as risk goes. It costs a little bit more, but your risk is left. You're not gonna have a truck out here to haul sewer while you get your pump station back up and running. And if any of you've been through up at Ocean Highlands, there is no room. Where would we put a truck? How would we get the truck in there, turned around? There's not even room for a truck to back up to the wet well. You know, a truck that size. So, there are other risks, but we need to weigh all those out. All the other pump stations are operating without issues. We are updating our battery backup systems. We have the Bradley ones in there now, and those are hardwired in. They have a new one now that we can switch over to. It's a couple $100 more, but it's a plug and play. We won't have to pay an electrician to come in here, unwire it, remove it. Basically, we'll just just plug it into the wall, and then they can unplug it, remove it, insert the new one, and plug it back in, which that alone will save you $700 to $1,000 each time you have to do that. The effluent pump, of course, after I wrote this, they finally responded, but it'll be Tuesday, the new pump that we ordered, the new pump will be installed at the effluent pump station. Attached also, we have the Wetico. This is the same contract that we did last year. It gives us the 12% off on parts. The price didn't go up. There was no increase from the last one. So I would like to get approval to do this again. It's worked out pretty well.
How are the bulbs holding up?
The lamps are holding up rather well. The lamps go out, we found out, is from other connectors that are down there, so it's different parts. They're wire parts, just like a light switch. You turn it on and off enough, it will finally stop working. It's on almost the same basis as that. So we just ordered like $4,000 of spare parts. We've used up almost all of our spare parts on the last go around. So we're not going through the expensive lamps like we were though.
If, as you're recommending we go ahead and do this again, do we have to do the training component again, or?
The training component?
Yeah, there are two. Is there
There's an
three?
additive there.
Is it, like,
There's a $1,800 training or the PMA package, we just didn't know which one we needed.
We'll do the same one as we did last year. I think it was the PMA.
so the training is needed every year?
No, we
Oh,
don't do the training.
PMA,
We don't.
with three, okay, the
Yeah.
plain PMA, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah.
Got it. So it'll be $7,544.
Yeah, it'll be, yeah.
I'm agreeable with that.
So do you need us to make a motion, Dave?
Yes, please.
Make a motion that we go ahead with the Wetico process of $7,544.
Second? I'll second.
Oh, I thought you were seconding.
Anybody have
No,
any,
I'll second it, so I don't know if John can second it.
anybody have any additional questions?
Nope, that was my question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I just have another note on here, but we might have already covered it from earlier, but we have a renewal this year of our application. It's renewal application for NPDS permit. So on the manual transfer switch, and we had the change order, I went back through the documents from what the contractor supplied to the manufacturer and what the engineer approved. And what they supplied and what they approved was for a 400 amp transfer switch. When they received the quote back, which they sent me a copy of, the quote on there was for 400 amp, but they priced it out at a 200 amp. Manufacturer is not increasing it because this was a few months ago. And the contractor said it's a straight pass-through. He's not going to add his usual markup to this. Granted, he's on the hook to have to get it anyway. It was his supplier that messed up, but he would really not like to have to eat the cost. If the manufacturer had quoted it right the first time, you would have paid this anyway. And I've done enough construction that if you hurt the contractor at some point in the contract, you always run into problems when you do things like this, when you open it up. And this stuff happens. I mean, we had when this plant was built, they sent us a control panel for the headworks, and all of our boxes were spec'd out as stainless steel, and we got one that was mild steel. So this stuff does happen. And we did make the contractor whole on that, and he took back the old one and he gave us credit for the price of that one, and we had to pay, we just paid the interest. So, this one, there's no 200 amp showing up, you know, it's a 400 amp.
And the mistake didn't have any other consequences to the district or
No,
additional
no.
costs?
The only thing is, the contractor had to order it in order to meet his contract requirements to get the job done on time. His quote, his statement to me was, I really hope I don't have to eat this much, you know? So I've worked with a lot of contractors, these guys seem to be pretty amenable, I mean, they did the generator change for us without any markups. They got the old one canceled and the new one without any cancellation costs. So they've been working with us throughout this entire project. They've done extensions, they've asked for no money for the extensions, you know, a lot of it's not their fault when manufacturers just can't get you the parts. So, I would advise the district that we do authorize the change order to cover this $6,455.
Need a motion for that?
Well, yeah, because you're gonna have to approve for me to sign the change order.
I
There's-
that we approve the change order.
Second?
Then, looking at the change order, this includes the portable generator?
Yeah, so
Or
yeah,
just go over the 136 and the 127 on the, I think it's.
okay, so let's you're gonna have to so to make sense to you, I'll start in the middle. So the original contract was 127,000, okay? Then we did a change order and we upsized the generator and the manual transfer switches, okay? That brought the cost up to 136,801. The 136,000 was the additional for the generator.
The
which-
additional, over and above. the
Over and above,
127.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you add the 6,455, that's where you come up to the 270,000. So we already authorized the 136, which that should have included the 6,455, but they didn't get the right quote back.
So it's the portable generator, the manual transfer switch down in Oceanside
Oceanside and Netarts.
and Netarts?
And
both of
Netarts,
them.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
When this was brought up last month, my initial reaction was to just split the cost with the contractor. You said you wanted to investigate the documents, to make sure of what happened and whose fault it was. Based on your recommendation and having worked with these folks on a long-term basis, I withdraw that and then we'll go with your recommendation.
Okay.
In general, seems like we have a good relationship with these contractors, and
Yes.
my experience with contractors is that if you treat them well, they treat you well.
And remember, we have more pump stations we want to add these
Right.
to. And I would hate to have to suffer a bid, you know, to make up for whatever
Yeah.
was lost on this one.
So,
Lose a priority place in line or something.
So, was the manual transfer switch for Oceanside spec'd out properly at 400 amps to begin with?
200 amps,
Two,
200 amps. We had to change to 400 amp because we doubled the size of the generator.
right.
And we did that so that we'd be able to.
Yes, so we
move in
can,
different places.
because you
Right.
remember, we had a problem with them wanting us to buy 3 different size generators.
Right.
So what my question is, it had to go to 400 amp manual transfer switch, right?
Yes, because we enlarged the size
So
of the
was
generator.
the original spec and the original order correct for Oceanside, but was not for the, this, wait a minute, this is for Oceanside completely, the 400 amp? Or is it for Netarts?
It's for Netarts, yeah. But they had to upsize both of them. Oceanside required a 200 amp service with that smaller generator,
Right,
all right? You went to the larger generator, you had to upsize from 200 amp to 400 amp at both pump stations.
Okay, so that's what this 64.
Yeah, it covers basically two upsized, manual transfer switches.
All right.
Okay.
So, now that I've confused everybody, all in favor of accepting the contract change order, say aye.
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 And I think you signed the last change order.
Okay.
So John would sign this one, board chair would sign this one. Okay?
Make sure you tell me. All those tabs.
Okay, that's all I have, and unless the board has any questions.
All right, old business. I don't think we have any. New business. Budget. So, our, first of all, I guess the first item